Welcome to the final half an hour of the ground report here on ANN7 with myself, Stefanie Jansen van Vern. Let's take a quick recap of your headlines. Pretoria campus of Tshwane University of Technology has been closed for the day after violence flares up on the campus. The public spat between the Independent Police Investigative Directorate and SAPS Boss General Khomotso Pakhlane likely to dominate the Parley panel meet today. IPID is briefing Parliament's Police Committee. 2 suspects arrested in connection with the murder of a Sakumzi restaurant manager appear in the Orlando Magistrates Court. The 2 were arrested yesterday by Gauteng police. And the rand hits a 15-month high against the US dollar on the back of a strong jobs data suggesting the economy is improving. Well, taking a look at your top story, IPID will be briefing Parliament's Police Committee today. This will be IPID's first briefing since the return of Robert McBride as its head. Well, let's cut live to Parliament.
The reporting matters, Chair. The one thing that's outstanding with the reporting matters here is the issue of station lectures has been put on hold. We've asked them for a report on the station lectures because of budgetary constraints. Then the second thing that was not provided was the terms of reference for municipal police in disciplinary cases. That has not been provided to the committee. And then the copies of the monthly recommendation meeting reports with SAPS. We have not received that. And the progress report on the progress of prosecutions, that wasn't implemented. And then the last one is the progress report of consultative forum meetings wasn't provided. So it's those 4 areas, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Guinness, for that report, members. I think everybody's received the report, so everybody's now on the same page for the interaction. Thank you very much, Mr. Guinness. So we'll go now to the Executive Director and his team for the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Honourable Chairperson. I think before I get into the presentation, there's just a basic background historically on IPID. IPID came into existence in...
Just the microphone, maybe. Yeah,
thank you, sir. 2012-2013 financial year is the advent of IPID and the changeover, the transition from ICD to IPID. IPID then having a new mandate, additional mandates, more detailed investigations required. IPID takes its first steps as an independent organization. As it's still finding its feet, the first financial year, there's significant underspending. And then 2013-2014, it continues. There's underspending. But from 14-15, there is no underspending. There's 99% expenditure with minimal amount of accrual. In 2015-2016, it's the pattern is the 99% expenditure with limited, negligible accrual. So it took 2 years of functioning of its existence during the transition from ICD to IPID to get its feet, to appoint all the necessary people, and the pattern now is complete expenditure without any under expenditure. 2016-2017, the projections is that unless we mitigate it, there will be over expenditure. The over expenditure is due to a number of factors, objective factors, like the fact that we were never ever properly funded. If you look at the history of ICD, what was agreed to, and with the advent of IPID, the simple truth of the matter is that IPID is underfunded. For example, certain aspects of our program will not be completed. We had Forum Commission recommendations, both pertaining to the Marikana incident and to general aspects relating to independence of IPID. For the recommendations relating to the investigation, we received no additional funding. At the moment, we require funding for reconstruction of one of the scenes And those figures we can make available. And in our meetings with the Office of the National Director of Public Prosecutions, it was agreed that we should attempt to find the funding to do the reconstruction. Follow also makes recommendations relating to our independence and non-reliance on SAPS for key investigative capacity. That is unlikely to be fulfilled as long as we continue to be underfunded. Since we reached our full expenditure in 15-16, there has been reduction and continuous reduction in the budget. So we are unlikely to be able to fill key aspects of our required independence. We've taken strategic decisions as management in the EXCO that certain activities in the fourth quarter will have to be curtailed. Otherwise, we run the risk of over-expenditure. So the less of the two evils is some targets will not be reached. In that way, we can defer, and we've been advised by Treasury to defer some of the payments to the new financial year. But that leaves us with an accrual of around about 8 million, which means we start the new financial year already with less budget, even less than the reduced budget we received. The purpose of the briefing is to present IPID's progress with regards to the implementation of the PCP's BRRR, and some of the stuff has already been covered by Mr. Kinnis, and we'll also cover the report on the consolidated performance, particularly in the third quarter, and how it is affected. It's been affected by budgetary constraints facing the department. The stuff I've already touched on, the budget cuts and ceilings placed by National Treasury on compensation of employees. We've had a number of posts frozen, even though we've had over years an expansion strategy approved by everyone, including the committee here. Whereas we were growing in the right direction to what was agreed upon, we're suddenly going in the opposite direction where posts have been frozen, so we cannot grow. We cannot reach the initial size that we were intended to reach from inception. In fact, we are going backwards in terms of the number of approved posts. So some of the reasons why over-expenditure occurred is some of the transfers, the restructuring, some of the litigation that the department was involved in during the last 18 months. So now I'll... Okay, the first point there is dealing with the Farlam Commission. I've already touched on that. A lot of expenditure, unforeseen expenditure, was incurred as a result of our investigation team conducting its investigations, for which there was it was an unfunded mandate. We did not receive additional funds on it. The implementation of the recommendations of the AG, which will be covered by Director Internal Audit just now. Again, point 3 is what I've covered already, the reduction in underspending from inception. Employment of females, we had in 14-15 reached almost parity of 50%. Unfortunately, there will be a movement of staff, and with posts frozen, we need to balance. But our intention is to reach a target of 50% of females at SMS level. And in the future appointments, it will be made known that there will be a preference for females. The quarterly performance report will be dealt with just now also. Consequences of irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure. There's disciplinary actions and criminal cases initiated in some instances. The monitoring as a standing item at our management meetings of instances of fruitless and or wasteful expenditure. And it is as part of an element of financial management will be incorporated in performance agreements of all senior staff. As I said earlier, we will be unable to achieve our full independence with the current level of underfunding. Point 8 is related to point 6 that has been covered. We need to increase the training of our investigators. As you can see from point 9, we have made significant progress in training investigators, but we haven't yet gone into the specialization aspects, which some of that we intend doing in this coming financial year. Systemic corruption matters some of them will be dealt with in the second part of our presentation, and some of that will be taken by Mr. Sissoko. On point 11, the station lectures, we are of the view that the station lectures require us to advise the police that rape is not good. We think it's not really our task to be involved in that. Police are law enforcement officers. They know the law. They enforce the law. They should know, like in everywhere else in the world, in every culture, that rape is wrong. It shouldn't be our role to be educating them about the law. So we'd prefer if the committee supports us in that we actually do not participate in these lectures on informing people about the law. So we'd like your support as a committee on that we refrain from that. On 12, report on steps to reduce civil claims. If just a correction there under 12, the IPID standard operating procedures 6.5 provide for steps to follow when handling. Shouldn't be civil claims, should be arrests. We've also issued an executive director's directive about how we deal with arrests. We want to prevent having to deal with arrests unless absolutely necessary. We prefer to summons people to appear in court rather than having to go through the arrest process. Because it's our experience that where we have civil claims, it will be related to arrests. On top of that, we can't completely rule it out. Some people, when they are under investigation, resort to litigation to avoid being investigated. So we can't stop that. It's beyond our control. So some of the initiations of civil claims against us or of litigation is beyond our control. As has been mentioned already, we are engaged in regular discussions with the Office of the National Director of Public Prosecutions, and there are also meetings taking place at provincial level so that we can have a seamless relationship in which backlogs can be reduced and a better understanding of our different mandates can be achieved. We've now approved the appointment of service providers to deal with the trauma experienced by investigators. Very often investigators come onto scenes where there's been a shooting. I've dealt with, in terms of the outstanding recommendations, the station lectures, I've spoken to that. On the matter of the municipal police, I'll ask Mr. Sissoko just to deal with that one on the terms of reference. Monthly recommendation meetings, the reports on that will be provided to the committee. Progress of prosecutions and progress on the consultative forum. One issue, the consultative forum, a request was made by the Civilian Secretariat for a meeting of the consultative forum. Our view is that we should have a substantial agenda before we agree to a meeting which appears to be intended to tick the boxes for performance. We'd prefer the pre-consultative forum meetings where we actually jointly establish what the agenda is so that it's a meaningful meeting and not merely a situation of ticking the boxes. So we've made that request to the Civilian Secretariat, and we will be meeting with them shortly to establish a date before the end of the fourth quarter to be able to engage with them on substantial matters.